My name's Ty, I'm a physical preparation coach, and today I'm going to be going through 10 questions of the most asked questions on the internet in regard to flexibility training. I'm going to go through one by one and answer as best I can. So here we go. First question: how often should I stretch to improve flexibility? First of all, I'd hope that you're static stretching to improve your flexibility, as I believe only static stretching and variations of that will actually move the needle and improve your flexibility. The next part of that is it depends. So how often talks about frequency, and frequency is dependent upon fatigue. So if you have never stretched before and then I get you to do 60 minutes of stretching, you're going to pull up pretty sore and you're going to be pretty tired as a result of doing it. But as the months go on, 60 minutes slowly starts to feel easy. So the frequency will depend on your skill level, your ability to recover as well. But I believe this is an area most people overcook too early. They might do the same stretches too often, and therefore they aren't recovering between doing them. So it's a great question, and the frequency does depend on the volume of the stretch, the total minutes, hours done, and the intensity, how hard you go, how hard you push the stretch, which I believe most people overestimate what they need in order to get an improvement as well. So hopefully I've answered that there. Question 2. When is the best time to stretch? Before the workout, after, or separate session? This is an absolute cracker of a question, actually. I always stretch before. I always static stretch before. Strength training, speed training, endurance training, whatever it is, I always static stretch before. Stretching after, I'm not as worried about. You can do it, but I don't see that as important as stretching before. And a separate session is definite. A dedicated stretch session is absolute. If you want to improve flexibility or at least maintain a level of flexibility during the in-season, for example, you should be doing separate dedicated sessions for flexibility training. Going back to the stretching before, a lot of people, static stretching got demonized. You can't do it before, it's going to make you weak, all this sort of fucking bullshit. That's just not true at all. If you know how to stretch properly, appropriately, for the individual's needs, and you are progressive in your intensity and you don't overdo it, and you have warm-up protocols, stretching before, static stretching before other forms of training is so superior. So that is it's a great question. Best time to stretch, I always stretch before. You can stretch after if you want, but I never miss the stretch before. And definitely separate dedicated sessions for flexibility training, absolutely. What is the best type of stretching? Static, dynamic, PNF for increasing flexibility? Great question. And I sort of already answered this one. Static stretching is the best, and PNF, contract, relax methods and things like that, they are fantastic as well. There's just variations of static holds. Dynamic stretching is not going to improve your flexibility. It will raise the joint temperature, and it can be used, for example, with a martial artist throwing high kicks, or an AFL footballer, for example. But you static stretch before, and then you slowly and progressively get into your dynamic movements, but you always static stretch. So dynamic has a place. It's not that often, and it's with specific sports more likely. But the static's the king, so to speak, as far as actually gaining flexibility. The feeling of dynamic stretching making you more flexible is not it's not real at all. It's just raising the joint temperature and giving you the feeling that you're more flexible, but you haven't actually changed the joint space, the joint relationship. So that's not a popular opinion, but that's what it is. I'd love to see someone that just throws their legs around, measure their flexibility, 1 month and then 3 months, 6 months down the track, do that for over that time and then compare. You're not going to change the flexibility at all. So static stretching for sure, and variations of that, contract, relax methods, so forth. Next question. Does stretching actually prevent injury or improve athletic performance? In my opinion, yes, absolutely. If done appropriately in relative to everything else you're doing in your program, because what happens is you can have a phenomenal stretching program, flexibility training program, but if the rest of the physical qualities, strength, speed, and endurance, are horribly implemented and imbalanced, then you're just creating more issues. So you won't really see the positives of the flexibility training. And that's pretty common. So the whole training process needs to be congruent with what you're trying to do within the program. And if flexibility is your priority at the time, then it should show in your program by sequence, volume. It should be obvious when you look at the program. So it can definitely prevent injuries through improving the joint gap, so the space between the bones, the muscle lengths, the tissue tension, and therefore improve muscle function. So from an injury prevention standpoint, that's pretty important. Improve athletic performance, you're going to improve athletic performance by doing that alone. By improving the muscle function, you're going to improve power output and all the rest of it. So yes, it can do both. And it does if you do it smart. Like I said, if it's in balance with the rest of the training program. Next question. How do I increase flexibility if I'm 30 plus years old and ridden with past injuries? Yeah, look, injuries make things tougher. There's no doubt about it. And if you're going to get the health of the body sorted in terms of flexibility, you'd want to do it whilst you're younger. Because the older you get, the harder it gets to gain flexibility, the more stretching you have to do. So from an age standpoint, it's a variable, but you're not limited by it. You can still get the result. So if you've got lots of injuries, obviously you've got to individualize that approach to those particular injuries with your stretching. If certain muscle groups are a cause for that injury, then get them sorted. So, like I said, age, it's a variable, but don't be too ruled by it. It just means that you're probably going to have to do more stretching the older you are. So yeah, more volume. Intensity and volume are your variables. Frequency of your stretching. Do yourself up a flexibility program and stick to it and progress. How long should each stretch be held for best results? This is a commonly asked question, and it's a bit redundant. It's like, how long's a piece of string? Well, I don't know. You could, for someone that hasn't done a lot of stretching before, you may do shorter holds, but you may not. It really comes down to the individual's skill levels, their ability to relax. If they can't relax, then they're not going to do very well anyway. So if I was working with someone that wasn't very good at relaxing, I wouldn't keep them in a stretch for too long because they'll probably progressively get more intense or they'll overdo it anyway. So you've got to be careful about their exposure to the longer holds if they're not very in control of their ability to manipulate intensity in stretching. So there are some muscle groups, however, that seem to prefer longer holds, like the groin muscles, for example. Sometimes you've got to stay in those for a longer period of time. So it just means you've got to go soft enough with your intensity that you can stay in there and not feel the need to come out. So how long? It varies, and it's individual. So it doesn't answer that question directly, but it could be 5 seconds, it could be 20 seconds, you could stay in it for a couple of minutes. Do what works best for you as the individual. Trial what works best, essentially. But they all work. Next question. Where am I up to here? So, how many minutes per week of stretching produces real improvements in range of motion? Again, I can't be specific because I don't know the individual situation, and this is the type of question that most ask. How many minutes per week? Now, if you want to look at finding out how many minutes is actually probably going to do the trick for you, you need to know how many minutes of the week you spend tightening the body. So that includes your strength training, speed training, endurance training, your occupation. Sitting at a desk tightens your hip flexors, tightens your chest. How long do you spend at work? How long do you spend doing the other forms of training? These are all tightening activities. Tally it all up, get the total, and then make sure you do enough time in flexibility training to counter it and actually improve your flexibility. So it takes a bit. It takes a lot more volume than what people realize. It really does. But just doing that simple practice of tallying your tightening time versus your loosening time and looking at those ratios and getting them to where you need them to be to actually improve your flexibility. So it's an individual thing, but please work that out because it's eye-opening how much time you actually need to gain flexibility based on your lifestyle. Is high volume stretching better than low volume for flexibility gains? Absolutely, that's an easy one. High volume stretching is one of the only things in training where more is probably better. And you can't say that about really much else. It doesn't come up very often. It's pretty rare where more is better. Virtually everything else in training is less is more. So definitely high volume stretching ultimately is better than low volume, but you might have to start low volume when you're learning and then progress the volume out and the intensity up and all the rest of it. So yes, it depends on your training age, but yes, in a general sense, high volume is better. Can resistance training alone improve flexibility? No fucking way. This is another myth that's perpetuated by the fitness industry. You can do these weird fucking circus strength exercises and they apparently improve your flexibility. They're not in the real world. They're kidding themselves. Strength exercises are tension-producing activities. They make you tighter. Now, if you were someone that sat around all day and you never really moved much, and then all of a sudden you went to the gym and you moved a lot, you might feel like you have more range because you fired up the muscles, etc. But that is going to have a low ceiling. You might get a very small improvement when you finally start moving your body. But that is going to have a very low ceiling of improvement, and before you know it, you're tightening your body up again. So it's important to recognize strength training or other forms of training, whether it be speed or endurance, as tightening activities. So resistance training, strength training, it's a tightening activity. It makes you tighter. There's no doubt about it. And that is reflective of some of the posture you see in a gym. Horrendous stuff. It's an imbalanced strength program that's shaping them that way. Okay, on to question number 10. What are the common mistakes people make with stretching? They've got a buzzword, which is mobility work. I don't use that term. But yeah, what are the common mistakes people make with stretching? Most common one, easily, is stretching too hard. Stretching too hard, too early. So they'll go into a stretch and I'll say, okay, go really light for me. And then they'll go bang. And they'll go to such a level of intensity, discomfort, that they'll feel the need to have to come out after a while. That tells me they're stretching way too hard. So what I like to do with people that do that is I say to them, get into the stretch, find me a zero, find me no stretch at all. Get into the stretch, but find me nothing. And they get there and they say, okay, well, just improve it a little bit until you find you feel the slightest stretch. And they go, okay, now I'm there. And they go, then I go, all right, that's where you're going to stay. And they look at me like I'm fucking crazy. But that's the mentality that you have to have with stretching, is to respect that how relaxed you need to be in order to get the result. And that's a little trick that I use for someone that's very aggressive in their training, or they have a training history of aggressive sports, for example, like football codes or boxing or something like that, and they want to muscle everything and go hard and be aggressive. It's actually a majority of people, to be honest. So the most common mistakes, stretching too hard. The other one is they don't understand what muscle groups they're stretching. They don't use enough variations for double joint muscles, for example. So as an example for that one, you might stretch the quads, the front of the thighs, in two variations to stretch we'll put priority on the bottom end and the top end of the quadricep flexors. So double joint muscle is muscle that crosses the two joints. So for the quads, crosses the knee, crosses the hip. It's important to stretch both ends. It's to use stretches that stretch both ends. And so it's more a misunderstanding of muscles. And I don't expect everyone to get that straight away, but it can hurt your results if they're not optimizing that. So same is true for calves. There's straight leg calf stretch and bent leg calf. There's a straight leg hamstring stretch and a bent leg hamstring stretch. You're stretching both ends of the muscle. So it's just more of an educational thing and understanding of the muscles. So they're probably the biggest errors, with stretching too hard too early being the biggest one. And it gives people the idea that stretching doesn't work. And that's just bullshit, because anything else that you do in training, whether it be strength, speed, and endurance, I guarantee you the first time you do it, you're going to suck at it. But for whatever reason, there's this double standard when it comes to flexibility training. Like, they suck at flexibility training to start with, but they give it up straight away. They don't come back and try again. But with everything else, I sucked at strength training the first time, but I'll get back in the gym and do it again. So whether it's I'm bored or whatever it is, there's a double standard there between flexibility training and all other physical qualities. And it's sad because they miss out on tremendous opportunity. So that would be the common mistakes in stretching. So that is the 10 questions for this episode. And I'm quite open to leaving questions in the comments. If you want me to cover them in the next episode, then I'm more than happy to do that. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. And there's plenty of questions out there on the internet. So I'll see you next time.